All right, welcome. It is Wednesday again, and it's Inside Gateway. We have Chad Kaeb, who
Hello, everybody.
happens to be my boss. It's a little weird interviewing my boss, but we'll go with it. All right, Chad, what is your current position here at Gateway?
Okay, my current position is development director. That's the title.
Okay, so that's a title. Unpack that for us just a little bit more.
Yeah, I would say majority of people are not familiar with what that title entails, but essentially, development director. As development director, I oversee both fundraising efforts as well as the PR team. So those are kind of the two big pieces that I manage and oversee. So
FRPR.
Yeah.
So good. Okay. So bring us back a little bit to your first exposure to Gateway Woods.
Okay. Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier, and my first exposure to Gateway was probably when I was in high school, and I went to a family camp in northern Indiana, and Tim and Jenny came, and I remember Tim a few years bringing residents along, and through Tim was really my first exposure to Gateway Woods. So I had a different view. These were kids that were peers, that were residents, and I didn't know quite what to think of and how to necessarily interact at the time, but that was my first kind of exposure to Gateway Woods and the ministry and a little bit about it.
So is it like in the 90s or?
Yeah, it would have probably been, I would say mid 90s.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was Tim the administrator at the time?
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I should probably know that, but I think Tim was
Well,
had
just-
been an administrator.
That's really
at the time.
cool
Yeah.
that the administrator would bring residents to a camp.
Yeah.
Because generally now it's house parents that would do it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And some of them might have been one or two that were former residents that Tim still had relationships with and connections, but yeah, definitely that was kind of my first exposure to Gateway Woods. So.
Very good. Well, it didn't scare you off because here you are today, and bring us into speed to where you are here. So obviously you didn't just come to Gateway to be the development director or my boss. What brought you here?
Yeah, no, good question. The easy answer is that the Lord brought us here, but that's obviously a short answer. I would say, even though I had
It's a Sunday school answer.
Yeah,
We're not here.
yeah. I would say that God went to great lengths to get us out here as house parents. Even though I had awareness of Gateway, I volunteered at Gateway. I had a brother that worked as a volunteer coordinator, two sisters that were assistant house parents. My dad was actually on the board, and all these connections to Gateway. I don't think Chris and I ever thought about coming out to Gateway Woods as house parents, and so it wasn't until a time when we were looking at transition in Central Illinois and looking to sell a house and move into a new, bigger house was our plan. God had a much bigger house in plan. It was one that had 7 teenagers in it. So it was neat to see how God laid that on our heart, pursued us. And at the start, we were very cold towards it. Not that we had anything against the ministry, just didn't feel we were equipped, didn't make sense with what we were going through in life. But God made it abundantly clear it's something that He wanted us to pursue, and it's been a blessing coming out. And so that would have been, looking back, I think it was 2009, would have been fall of 2009 is when we came out as house parents, and spent about 4.5 years in house parents.
So what was your training or your degree before you came out here?
Yeah, so my degree was in marketing with emphasis in sales. So most of my life I had done positions that had dealt with either marketing, mostly had worked in sales. So anything pharmaceutical sales to architectural sales, worked with mason contractors, builders, stone and brick sales. And so I worked with people, and I worked in that role, but social work was not anywhere on the horizon in my world. So.
And that's generally the case. I mean, most house parents that come out, they're not with a social work degree, and I think that could be a speed bump or a hesitation on a lot of us. It's like, well, am I going to be a good fit? So speaking to that a little bit, just like to kind of ease people's minds that obviously if God's behind anything, good things happen. Yeah. But let's take out of that a little bit, just personally, just trying to conquer those doubts.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point, because I think In our case, neither of us had social work backgrounds. It was not something that really God had laid on our heart specifically. Although looking back at it, we enjoyed working with teens. We had interaction and worked with kids. And so it wasn't we didn't have a heart to engage with that age group. We just didn't. It was just interesting to see how God kind of led us out here. But then we realized after the fact how He equipped us. So it's interesting to see how even though our skill sets and my training and my schooling, none of it really seemed to make logical sense. In God's mind, He had a much bigger picture. And so once we got out here, it was really neat to see how God created within us a heart for the ministry, a heart for the kids we worked with, and really taught us a lot through that time. And very thankful for those experiences and for the learning that went along the way. And so even though there was not training there, the neat thing is once you come on board, there's definitely a lot that gets invested into you to bring you up to speed, to help you understand trauma, to help you understand the teenagers and the type of kids that you're working with, and to help develop just an understanding, a healthy understanding of the culture that they're coming from, the culture of poverty, or coming from broken homes, or coming from trauma and abusive situations, and how do you deal with that? How do you listen? How do you invest? And so there's definitely ongoing training, and there's upfront training that happens that helps prepare you. But the reality is that God's calling you. Don't run away from that. I think my wife and I at the start really got to a point where we felt like we were like Jonah, where we were running away from what God was calling us, and it was really convicting to say that He was going to great lengths to say, hey, no, I want you out here. And so if God's calling you there, He will equip you. He will give you the tools and that you need to be able to do the work that's here. So
That never works, does it?
yeah, unless God doesn't. No.
As always, if you have questions, please chime in. So, Emily, do you have any questions?
Not yet.
Okay. Very good. So you talked about different things that you learned. Is there anything specific that kind of jumps out that you're thankful for your time as house parent that you've learned?
Yeah, I would say God really grew Christy and myself through that time. As a couple, individually, we really got stretched in a lot of ways. We got taken out of our comfort zone, and I think in doing that, that's a lot of times where we grow the most. And so I look at that, and there's so many different ways that He grew us. Some of it was just learning to work together as a couple in a unified force, working together with the kids that are in your house. I would say one thing that very much changed was my perspective on people, where I didn't realize that I had in my mind, I already had preconceived notions in how I judged people, and I didn't think I did. I thought that I was pretty open, but it helped working through different situations and seeing backgrounds. It helps you understand where some of these kids are coming from, and why they struggle, and why they've made choices they made, and the hurt and the pain. I feel like God really gave me a heart of compassion that I didn't have before, and really helped me see the need that's out there. And so that's something that's totally changed. My perspective's different now than it was 9 years ago when we came out here, and in a very good way.
Yeah, I think house parent has a way to take the blinders off, because when we just walk through life, we pretty, not necessarily self-focused, but we're kind of narrowly focused. Like, this is my goal, this is where I'm going to go, this is how I'm going to get there. And there's lots of lives that are around us that are walking beside us and we don't even realize. Yeah. And so house parenting just opens that whole peripheral, that you see those other lives. And that's what I loved, but that's also what I hated, because it slowed us down, and then it also helped us realize how much in need we are ourselves. Because when you spoke of the judging others, it's like that's almost a pride issue for all of us, that we kind of rank ourselves, well, I'm not as bad as so-and-so, or I'm trying to get to this level. And it's just like, that's what I loved about house parenting, is it slowed us down and helped us see the needs beside us instead of just always looking ahead. So what was a fun memory from your house parenting?
This is a loaded question. As I thought through this, first of all, I want to say I'm very thankful that when I look back in our 4.5 years of house parenting, I'm at a point in my life where most of the memories I have are positive memories. Yes, there were hard times. Yes, there were really difficult things we went through. Yes, there were times we wanted to pull our hair out. And there were situations that were really hard that you went through a range of emotions and times you even cried and struggled and wept over kids and decisions and choices and things that were going on. But overall, I have a lot of positive memories. So like my memory bank, I'm going through this last night and I'm thinking, wow, how do I pick a favorite memory? How do I pick one of my top 5 favorite memories,
Sure.
let alone one? And so I would say there's 2 things that as I look back through my memories that really resonate. There's 2 types of memories. One is the culture at Gateway that I have very fond memories, and that is those other house parents you work with that you get close to because you're working in the trenches together.
Yep.
And you need time to be able to debrief. And we had a really close group of house parents, especially the house dads, that did a lot together. And just so thankful for those relationships. And I'm reminded at least of one of those interactions. I remember when my wife and I were house parents, alternate house parents at Pine House for Joe and Heather. Shout out to Joe and Heather Beer. But one memory that I have of our time is Joe is really good at finding a way to insert humor as kind of a coping mechanism as you're dealing with heavy things. And so one of his ideas was when we did a changeover and we're getting ready to change the houses over and go over the notes and all the kids, we had to come to changeover and speak in an accent the entire time. Now we could change, but all 4 of us, and I tell you, I would never had so much fun going over hard and heavy, meaty issues
Sure.
as we did that time, and it was a fond memory I have. The other aspect of memories I look at is times in the houses. And each house that we were in, each set of kids that we had has different memories associated with them. And there's such a variety that's there, and there's so many fond memories as I look back on those times. And a lot of them were funny memories. A lot of them were times where you could enjoy and have humor. And I found that was a healthy way for us, and a lot of times for the kids to be able to have times that you could have fun with the kids, times that you could laugh at situations, because there's a lot of heavy things that you deal with. And so I'm reminded of one story that I share often if I'm thinking of a funny memory. And I'm not going to say names just for the sake, but we had a young man that was doing work out with the cows, was actually cleaning up some manure. And it was maybe an early spring, late winter where it was cold.
Yeah.
But yet it was wet. It was still wet enough and muddy enough. And so he was out and he had these big boots on that were not quite his size that he was using, knee-high boots that he was using, trudging through the manure and cleaning out the cow pen. And the cows were set off the side. And I guess the cows must have annoyed him. And so he had attempted to go over and give them some hay to kind of shut them up. And in doing so, he fell face first into manure. And he came into the house rather upset. I'll never forget this day. It was pretty clear. My wife was talking with another resident in the office and who was a little bit, had some tough things they were going through. And it was kind of a heated, tense moment. And all of a sudden, he comes in, walking in, dripping wet and holding a sock that is dripping with nasty stuff and beet red and just so upset at this moment. And I looked over at him, and most of our kids were still back in quiet time at this point, so there were just this resident here and this other one that just come in, and he was angry. He looked at me, he's like, "Chad, I'm so angry." And he was shaking, his face was just visibly upset. He's like, "I'm so upset at those cows." It's like, and he told me the whole story, how they were mooing at him, and he was so upset, and he had to go put some hay in there, and when he did it, he fell face first right in the manure. And he said, "I'm so angry. Don't send me back there. Chad, don't send me back there." So I tell you, I'm going to stick a pitchfork in one of them if you make me go out there. And I was trying so hard at this moment that he was so serious and visibly upset, so trying so hard to contain my laughter because I wanted so bad to laugh.
Yeah.
And thankfully we were able to calm him down. We didn't send him back out. We didn't want to lose a cow. But let him kind of change up, and we found something else that he could do for work that wouldn't upset him as much. But it's still one of those, and the ironic thing is my wife, who's in the other room with this other resident who they're dealing with some heavy stuff, they just started busting out laughing. Like they witnessed this whole thing, and it totally brought a little bit of humor to that situation that actually de-escalated that situation with the escalation of the other one. So that's definitely one of those memories and that I've had that sticks with me. And thankfully no cows were hurt. The young man got cleaned up. There was nothing serious that happened, but still is there's a lot of just little things that happen along the way that make you smile when you look back at them, and that can make you laugh. And I'm thankful that there's a lot of those fond memories. So
Yeah, I mean, I think both of those have humor, those stories, and I think it was Jeff that said, it's just like, humor is a way, even in counseling, that you really kind of break down walls or get through a wall or find a way to get around, circumnavigate, if you will. And I am the same way. If it's a coping skill for myself or a coping skill that you try to show others, it works. And it's a great tool. Reminds me of the line from a movie, I hate manure. So
we don't like manure. Not when you're face first in it.
If I remember correctly, your oldest child also is not fond of manure.
No, my oldest child, literally a week later, same thing happened to her. So, and we had to go get the boots out.
And we have photographic evidence.
Yeah, the boots had come, but she didn't fall face deep. She just got stuck. The boots got stuck, and it couldn't get out. So she didn't thankfully fall face first. She just had to get out of the boots and make her way back in. So. There's definitely some times there.
So the 4.5 years, and then was a seamless transition to the role that you're in now.
If you want to call it seamless, but I went from one to the other. Okay. So it's neat looking at my 9 years I've been at Gateway that I've spent almost half of it as a house parent, now half of it in my current role. So equally, both of them have an impact in my life and how I view Gateway Woods. And but yeah, there's a lot of fond memories that are created from both ways. So
how long were you guys alternates?
We were alternates for maybe, it was under 2 years, maybe a year and a half, a year and 10 months.
Was that all in Pine House under Joe and Heather? Or?
Mostly, we did some double duty with Nate and Rachel. Shane and Stephanie Beer were the first couple we started off with, and then Joe and Heather the majority of the time when we were alternates, and then Nate and Rach we had about 4.5 months, and that was a fun house too. That we have some fond memories in that house, some funny memories with those 4 boys that were in there at the time that we worked with. So.
And now both you and Heather are in the office here.
Yeah, both Heather and and my wife's in the office as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're just different roles. God just moved us around. So yeah, as far as the transition, it was interesting seeing how God moved me from being a house parent to this role as development director. So a lot of what I do as a development director, there's 2 main points, but the one that we focus a lot on is the donor relations and the fundraising side. And so there's a lot of opportunities I get to travel and I get to connect with donors and share the stories and help them be part of the ministry, and kind of keep them involved and keep them connected with both the needs and what is going on here, and letting them be very much a part of the story, because I've come to appreciate that it's not just the staff that's here that's performing the work of changing lives. It's everybody who prays, it's people that volunteer, it's people that come out for the auction, it's people that, it's those that give and they donate, that all make it possible. And it's really neat to see how God uses the body of Christ to work together. And it's been neat to see how God's used some of my experience in sales to help translate as I work in donor relations, as I work with doing church presentations, as I get to interact with people and share stories. And so there's a lot of similarities in what I do. So I love sharing stories. I get an opportunity throughout my interactions at church presentations and through my opportunities and just meeting one-on-one with people who have a heart and are advocates for the ministry, and sharing how God's working is always a really cool thing. Not just sharing the funny stuff, but sharing some of the serious stuff that when you see God make a breakthrough in a young person's life, that's always a really awesome thing. And that's really why we're here, and that's what really, when you talk about fond memories, those are the ones that probably the ones that resonate the most, or something like that. And those are sometimes I get opportunities to reshare some of those stories to give hope. So
we all need hope.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a little bit what you do in your new role. What's something that just really kind of gives you anxiety with this new role, like something you don't enjoy, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say,
Being John's boss.
I'm not gonna say anything about John and Emily. That's not it at all. I would say, by nature, I'm not a super organized person. So when I have paperwork and policies and procedures and things that I have to do, whether it's for accreditation pieces that I'm brought in on, or things like that, that's not my natural gift. It's not that I can't do it,
Sure.
but the details is not always my best gift. I love interacting with people. So whether that's interacting with my staff, which I will say right now, not just because they're with me, but I feel like I have one of the most cohesive groups. And I've said that before. I think the PR fundraising team of Chad, John, Emily, soon to be Dustin, is awesome. You know, and I love working with people, but I also love interacting with donors. I love the opportunities that Chris and I get to mentor and still interact with some of the kids that are here in residential. And so relationships come natural to me, and I love that. And I love the interactions that go with that. But yeah, the paperwork and the details and plugging stuff into the computer and sometimes forgetting to do that and have to go back and plug my notes that I forgot about interactions. Those are things maybe don't create necessarily anxiety, but they can build up, and they're not something I have to train myself to be more detail oriented to make sure that stuff gets done, because that's important too.
Thumbs up from Chad Heiniger.
Okay. I'm glad we have one person watching. Thanks, Chad.
Chad 2 have a question for Chad 1.
Not yet.
So, yeah, no, that's really good. I can resonate with that. Just wanting to be not to be isolated. Paperwork doesn't have a way to communicate back to us in a way that's maybe positive. So, having that people in that interaction, I could see that would be a positive thing. So speak to kind of your role now. It's towards the end of the year. Some things that we got going on that how people can get involved.
Okay. Well, I think where you're leading me, John, is maybe towards like our Giving Tuesday campaign, which is a social media. Giving Tuesday is really is around the corner. It's the Tuesday after Thanksgiving. So everybody's heard of Black Friday, where you try to get all your deals, and there's Cyber Monday. Well, Giving Tuesday is the next, and that's really been a neat thing to see how through social media it's found just another way to promote how can you give to charities, how can you connect and give back. You know, as you're spending money, how can you give back and be good stewards and invest in ministries? And so we do have a Giving Tuesday campaign that is just started. We're just starting to share some stories, but you will hear more about it leading up and actually on the day of the Gateway Farms initiative. Actually recently became a program as Eric and Marissa Baylor were hired earlier this year as full-time farm managers, so shout out to them. So yeah, it's exciting to see how God has grown Gateway Woods in a number of different ways and programs, but the Gateway Farms initiative, where residents are given the opportunity to learn skills, be employed, earn money, but also develop interpersonal skills and relational skills as they interact with customers. It has been a very valuable part of treatment. It's just another facet that's been added, and it's been neat to see how that's grown and how it's expanding through its time that it's been here. And so that is what a little bit of what's coming up as far as on our Giving Tuesday. This is obviously a big time of the year too when you look at giving. A lot of people wait and give year-end giving. So that is something that we're excited and thankful for each and every person that is part of this ministry that in changing lives. Every person is a very valuable has a very valuable part to play. Whether you're serving, volunteering, and whether you're giving or praying, each part is really critical and important. We're very thankful for each and every one of you.
Yeah, and so specifically for Gateway Farms, they're wanting to build a larger greenhouse.
That's correct. So they can extend they're looking to build a greenhouse, and so there'll be more details coming out on some of the specifics there. But the reality is so they can extend their growing season. So as they do these CSA baskets and are delivering baskets to customers, they can get more produce in them. They can extend the growing season and then replant. And it also provides more opportunities for employment for the kids as well. So these are all positive things as far as they grow, that they can support and connect the community with Gateway Woods, but also give employment opportunities to the residents that are here. So
very good. So the calendar hopefully should be hitting mailboxes around Thanksgiving,
Yeah.
maybe a little before that.
And that's John's baby, so I'll give him full credit on that one. I just get to look over it and proof it. So,
but there's always an appeals letter, and you kind of spoke to that a little bit. So looking back over a year, a calendar year of Gateway Woods, and then coming to the year's end, it's kind of like you said, it's an opportunity for people to kind of really give back financially. Obviously, we want people's prayers, and we need people's money, obviously, to make something work and to run well, because everything costs money. Unfortunately, that's just the world we live in. So I guess appeal one last time from the FRPR standpoint, how can people get involved in a financial way outside of maybe Gateway Farms?
Yeah, the reality is there's a lot of different ways here, and that's the kind of the exciting way. If you're looking at financially giving, whether that's through online donations, whether that's through recurring donations, whether it's through your year-end giving, but those that are farmers, we've had people that have given gifts of grain. We've had people that have stock that are appreciated in value, and they want to give the stock, and there's tax benefits there to giving that. There's different ways for those that are in Indiana where you can help scholarship kids at the school through the Sagamore Institute. NAP is another one, Neighborhood Assistance Program. There's ways where you can actually give and get actually state credits. There's where there's additional tax benefits. So there's a lot of different ways, and actually even creative ways where people can give, and it's not always even from cash. There's other ways to give commodities and to be able to give things, to invest in the ministry and invest in the kids that we talk about and that we work with. And that's not just in residential or Gateway Farms, but foster care and adoption in Lark, and home-based and going through in the school. And so there's we definitely rely upon our support base to provide the service that we do. Currently, we get roughly about 60% of our support is through program revenue that comes through state, but the other 40%, and this will vary from year to year, sometimes 35%, sometimes it'll be 45%, comes from church collections, from private donations from the auction, that we need everybody to play their part to allow us to continue connecting lives to Christ and to continue the services that we have. So
there's also the wish list online.
And yes, there's a wish list online for those that like specific things around Christmas time. That's usually for the residential staff, and they have house parents, things that maybe they needs or things they're looking for the kids or for their houses. So thanks for adding that, Emily. So
yeah, so get involved is kind of like the bucket on our website that you get most of those opportunities to get involved. All right, so I got a couple more questions, but do you have anything else to add at this point?
No, keep shooting away, John.
All right.
Chad chimed in with a question.
Okay.
He wants to know what the biggest fish you caught is.
The biggest fish that I caught.
I warned you not to tell fish
I
stories.
should tell fish stories. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually defer this, or maybe redirect this question. I'm going to, instead of sharing a fish story, I'm going to share a fishing story that happened with some of my residents. So because I enjoy fishing, one of the things that I have done throughout my time as alternates and as lead house parents is I would introduce kids to that. And oftentimes you have kids that came from inner city or from backgrounds that have never fished before, so it's a whole different experience. So catching even a little bluegill is that can be super exciting. Like I have pictures with kids beaming and they've got this 3-inch fish on the end of their line. I think it's the coolest thing. But one of the experiences that many of my kids had the opportunity to do is what I call river fishing, where I would take them out into either St. Joe River or I'd take them out into the Cedar Creek. And we'd go out wading, and we'd be casting, and sometimes using live bait, sometimes just throwing lures for bass or for catfish or something. And so I've had many opportunities to take kids out. But I remember one time where we had three boys that I had taken, 3 teenage boys that were with me, and we were walking back, and we were in the Cedar Creek, which is not super deep. I mean, like waist deep, maybe belly deep at the deepest. But I remember we're walking back. We all have our poles. We were done. We'd caught fish for the day. And all of a sudden, one of our young men, Mike, all of a sudden he was gone. Like we looked over and he had hit a rock. There was a big rock and he went fully submerged. And so like I saw the other two that were right on either side of him, and all of a sudden he was gone, and then comes up in his face, his eyes are huge, and he is just soaking wet, you know, and we were all laughing pretty hysterically. I think he had a moment of fear there for a brief moment, because it wasn't a hole, it was just a rock that took him all the way under. But it was one of those kind of fun experiences that we gave him a hard time through the rest of the day. So there's been a number of different experiences like that have happened, but it's been neat to kind of teach kids just a different type of hobby. And a lot of them really, really enjoyed it, and they would beg me to take them. You know, that was like a treat if they got to go out river fishing. So,
Very good.
Chad, sorry I didn't tell you about the biggest fish, so I thought that was more pertinent.
He's taunting you a little bit, but I'm gonna let it go.
Okay.
All right, so I know you're a Cubs fan, and we have that mutual
Connection there, right?
connection. So, what's your favorite memory as a Cubs fan?
Oh, my favorite memory as a Cubs fan. Okay. Well, that's really easy, John, because it took 108 years for the Cubs to win a World Series. So I would say some of that, what was fun is I remember Game 7 having a big train of text messages that were going through different fans that were in the area, and they were kind of, you know, it was 1:30 in the morning when the thing finally got over, and everyone was like texting. And all of a sudden I get a text from my dad, who's been a long-standing Cub fan for much longer than me, obviously. And he had fallen asleep and went to bed before Game 7 was over. And he said, "Hey, what happened? I hear fireworks going off here in Illinois. That they must have won, but I don't know what happened." And he's like, "Well, it's getting too late and I had to go to work, so I just went to sleep. You know, I figured you'd tell me what happened." So I just got a chuckle with that one with my dad. So that was kind of a fond memory of being able to kind of give him the highlight of how it ended. So.
Well, that's great. Yeah, I remember sitting on the couch with one of my boys. Maybe it was Easton. He was just a little baby, and but obviously he went to bed. But just being able to watch a game and just the impact of obviously 108 years, and just sitting down with one of the boys watching it, and then it was just getting so long, and the rain delay. It was so emotional, but I won't get there.
I don't know if I was quite that emotional. I was in tears or anything like that.
Yeah, no, I wasn't that. It was just more the emotion of like just anxiety level going up and down. But anyway, so that's kind of what I had. I guess I want you, from your perspective, to our needs as far as careers, kind of speak into that.
Absolutely.
So we have the house parent, we have the teachers. I know Lark is expanding, so we can have that. Your wife is in that department, so maybe you could come from that angle. And then finally, I'm pretty sure that's it, unless I'm missing something.
I think we still have a need for home-based worker as well, too, if I
Okay.
remember correctly. So,
Yeah,
no, there's definitely many opportunities as far as if God's calling you or God's pressing on your heart, and that's the neat thing. There's definitely a need for house parent couples. In fact, we are going to be very shortly having to close a house because we're going to be short. And so if you know somebody or somebody that God's laying on your heart to kind of press somebody towards coming out, we just even to pray about it.
that's assistant as well. I mean,
yeah, we have both a need for an assistant house parent and a house parent couple. So both of those are needs that we currently have. The school right now, we are looking for a math teacher and an English teacher. So even if you know somebody who is maybe graduating in the spring that has those skill sets, so knowing that there's a long-term plan that's out there would be really nice to kind of start presenting those. So there's definitely needs that are here, but it's also a calling too. So I really encourage you, if you know people, to pray about it and to encourage. And if God calls you out here, He's gonna equip you, and He's gonna give you the patience, and He's gonna teach you through the process. And often, I will say, I felt like my wife and I learned more through the experience of coming out as house parents than we gave. So we came out thinking we're going to serve and make grand differences, and oftentimes we're the ones that change the most. And so you don't always know what the benefit and the value is. It's usually twofold: the kids you're working with, but also yourself. So
very well said. It is still November, so National Adoption Awareness Month, or National Adoption Month, however you want to say it. But we'll jump back into, we have 2 more weeks. We have next week, I believe it's Shanna, one of our adoption case managers, and then Terry the final week. And so tune in next Wednesday at the same time at 12:30, and we'll see you then. Thanks.